A very good evening to all the participants for today's group discussion. It's basically an extension of the session we had on Wednesday. Key checkpoints for statutory audit for financial year 21-22. Uh, Swati ma'am, very nicely conveyed a lot of points, a lot of important points that we need to take care while we are preparing the financial statements, starting from rounding off and moving to Karo. As ma'am said that we will be discussing 185, 186 as well during the current session. So before we start the session, just for the participants, ma'am, I'll just read out your profile, brief profile. CS Swati Tejawat is a practicing chartered accountant, presently partner at SKPT and Company, Guwahati. She is also an active member of ICSI and a registered valuer for securities and financial assets. She specializes in the practice area of corporate and insolvency laws. She regularly handles assignments for mergers, amalgamations, revival of companies, mismanagement operation cases, winding up, and is a regular practitioner at NCLT. Being a registered valuer, she is actively engaged in valuation assignments as well. She is also a faculty member at ICAI Guwahati as well as ICSI for conducting various training programs and is a resource person for various branch activities of the ICAI Guwahati branch. She's spoken at various platforms on the Companies Act and other topics. Her papers on corporate governance under the Companies Act have been published in leading journals. She is currently serving as the Vice President of Lions Club of Guwahati Elite, a super specialty Lions Club for chartered accountants and their family members. She is also a research scholar from the Assam Royal Global University, conducting research on corporate governance under the Companies Act 2030. With this, ma'am, I hand over the proceedings to you. I'll also, recognize the presence of CA Vishnu Tulsian. Very, very good to see you, Bhaiya. That even in this busy schedule, you've been kind enough to join today's session. We definitely look forward to to hearing from you, your inputs, your queries as well. And over to you want to say something, Vishnu Bhaiya?
We only have to share take the knowledge of Swati ma'am.
Definitely.
Please continue.
Yeah, over to you, Swati.
Thank you, Priyank. Thank you so much. जैसा कि प्रियांक जी ने बोला, this is an extension of what we did on Wednesday, and Wednesday ko we had a very, very fruitful group discussion on. We started with key points relating to Caro and revised schedule 3 this time, and with a lot of active participation, we had a very, very brainstorming 2 hours. I look forward to today's session also, and I am again hopeful that all the participants today will put in their inputs, because one thing I would like to point out that this is a GD, this is a group discussion, and I am only the initiator. We are only here to discuss things. So therefore, let's discuss a few important things that will concern us as auditors in Statutory Audit 21-22. Also, it is like Priyank ji had said, it is a great honor to have you around, sir, Vishnu ji, and I'm sure we will have good inputs from your end on various points that need to be taken care of in this year's statutory audit. Also, Priyank ji ने सुबह आज मुझे guidance note भेजा है कारो का जो revise हुआ है, and he said, can we have some discussion on this? We can definitely have discussion on Caro also. Of course, the whole thing is still revolving around Caro, जो Wednesday को भी था and अभी भी है, and lot of the discussions will find place from that guidance note also. So therefore, taking this forward from here, for the benefit of people who were not with us on Wednesday, we had started with rounding off, and we had touched upon certain clauses, okay, primarily fixed assets, that is property, plant and equipment, then inventory, and then we had just started with loans and advances given. Now, loans and advances is such a huge area of reporting, both for the auditor as well as for the management. I preferred to divide that whole topic into 2 parts. One was loans and advances given by the company, and one is loans and advances taken by the company. Right? So we just started with loans and advances given, and then we were talking on a few fine-tuning points. We'll just take today's session starting from there, and then we go back to the guidance note and और वहाँ पे discuss करना है तो, ठीक है? Just allow me a minute to share my screen.
In the meanwhile, I just request all the participants to actively take part in the group discussion. It's going to be a great learning experience for all of us, because the topic is never ending really. I mean, we all have queries day in and day out. So this probably gives us a very good platform to resolve our queries from the West. So yeah, I mean, please do make the most of it. Thank you.
Okay. Just let's just do a quick recap. Loans and advances given. Now, जब हम बात करते हैं कि statutory audit 2021-22 में loans and advances given में क्या special हो जाना है, तो सबसे पहला काम जो, if you would ask me what I would want to do during my audit procedure, would be to break the loanees into entities, okay, primarily into JV, subsidiaries and associates, and other entities like promoters, KMPs and related parties. Now, last Wednesday, we were discussing about who are promoters. People who were with us last Wednesday, I'm sure, are now clear with who would be promoters. Any questions, anything, any point of discussion that the audience today has on who are promoters? Because now who are promoters is a very important question, and this the auditor will have to ask himself or herself the moment he starts auditing. लास्ट वेंसडे को हमने बहुत बात की कि बैलेंस शीट बनाता कौन है. अगर बैलेंस शीट बनाता कौन है उसका आंसर आपके दिमाग में भी सेम आ रहा है जो मेरे दिमाग में है, तो फिर हमें बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी हो जाता है ये जानना कि प्रमोटर्स कौन है. बिकॉज प्रमोटर्स 3-4 जगह इस बार दे आर फाइंडिंग प्लेस. Earlier, not so much emphasis was there on the promoters. This year, there is going to be a lot of emphasis on promoters in the balance sheet, right? So therefore, who are promoters? The audience today, if anybody has any point of discussion on who are promoters, we had discussed this at length on Wednesday already. But जो लोग नहीं थे, अगर उनमें से किसी को भी, if you feel you want to add something, who are promoters and how would you identify promoters as an auditor yourself? Anybody who has anything to add on to it? As an auditor, how would you identify who is a company? Anybody who would want to reply can unmute or put in their views in the chat box. I mean, how as an auditor you would identify? Okay. I see no responses. Assuming that we all are going to be promoters, and the discussion on promoters was clear on Wednesday. We'll take this forward from here. Okay. Now, last time we were talking, there are a lot of registers, okay, statutory registers, which we auditors never took care of, and most private limited companies probably do not even maintain such statutory registers. लेकिन इस साल का जब ऑडिट करेंगे ना, तो वो स्टैट्यूटरी रजिस्टर्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाएंगे, क्योंकि क्या होगा कि धीरे धीरे आपका सारा डिस्क्लोजर जो बैलेंस शीट में जा रहा है वो आप कहीं ना कहीं यू कैन हैव अ vis-a-vis with those statutory registers, right? Now, terms and conditions of loans and advances to be looked into, including repayment. Also, another very important thing that we all have to keep in mind, the moment you decide that a loan is given to a promoter. Now, let's say my company is giving a loan to Mr. Priyank Singhi, and Priyank Singhi is a promoter of my company. Okay. So the moment you as an auditor decide that Mr. Priyank is a promoter and loan has been given to him, and if the disclosure has been made by the management in the balance sheet, fair enough. Always go ahead to look for the same disclosure in your related party disclosure also. Because the moment you term a person as promoter, he also becomes a related party, right? So therefore, एक जगह से ना बहुत जगह इस बार लिंकेज आपको मिल जाएगा, right? जैसे लास्ट वेडनेसडे को हम बात कर रहे थे, if you show something as if you show an advance that you have taken, that will be corroborated with form DPT3 now, right? So a lot of balances in balance sheets will now be taken care of by a lot of other supporting documents. So as auditors, we have to keep our eyes really open this time, right? Whether any loan or advance in the nature of loan also we had discussed, loan documents to be thoroughly scrutinized. Now whether loans or advances made into intermediaries, ये हम बात कर रहे थे कि रूल 11 में इस बार एक छोटा सा चेंज आया है, एंड वो छोटा सा चेंज बोलने को छोटा है, बट ऑडिटर्स पे बहुत ज्यादा प्रोसीजरल, देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ प्रोसीजरल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑन द ऑडिटर कास्ट to say that whether any loan was given to any intermediary who in turn advanced that loan to somebody else, whereas my company is the ultimate beneficiary in this case, right? So to find this out, we have to ultimately understand what is the end use of that loan that we gave to जिसको भी हमने दिया है, right? Then we were talking of whether provisions of section 185 and 186 have been complied with. Now, these are two very, very draconian provisions of the Companies Act 13. जब नया नया Companies Act 13 आया भी था, so we were all in a mindset, and we had all attended seminars, and I'm sure so many seminars focused primarily on section 185, 186, section 180, 188, which was related parties. So these are sections which are always been talked of. And when we talk of section 185, loan to directors, are we all sure that a private limited company can give loan to directors or not?
Ma'am, I do want to add something over here. ये वाला चीज को so there is a clause in 185 which I think says that private company में if there is no body corporate as a shareholder, in that case you can advance loan to directors, if I'm not wrong, right? In case there is a body corporate which is a shareholder, right? What should be done in that case?
Okay.
You have to follow all the procedure that you have to make an advertisement, or just passing a special resolution works, or do we have to file that in the ROC again, or it's just a document that we need to prepare and keep? So I mean, what should be done in that cases? Because in most of the private companies, this is what you will find, that there is a body corporate, and that there are loans which are advanced to directors or related parties as such.
Okay. Okay. Anybody who would like to add to this query or would like to, put in any views here? Anybody who would want to add to the query of Priyankji or would on this answer? Anything? Any further queries on 185? One is this ki agar shareholder body corporate, if there is a body corporate shareholder, can I still advance loan to my directors?
And again, one more thing. So for NBFCs, what is happening is, for private companies, which are registered as NBFCs, what is happening is that there are various provisions wherein you have to receive the amount of interest, right? I mean, earlier what used to happen, we used to keep accruing it, and खाली बैलेंस बढ़ता रहता था, पैसा वापस कभी आता नहीं, ठीक है? अब ऐसा हो गया है कि अपने को we have to receive that check, ठीक है? So a lot of times what happens is कि some companies say कि उनके पास में funds नहीं है, तो again वो route होता है कि मैं आपको एक दूसरे कंपनी से देता हूँ, वो आपको देता है, फिर वो मेरे को देता है, how do you ensure as an auditor कि I mean ऐसा नहीं हो रहा है, because it becomes very difficult if you have to track each and every transaction. What is the course of action in that case?
Okay. So we have two queries. One is relating to what happens if there is a body corporate. Second is what happens if there is a web of transactions happening between companies which are interrelated, subsidiary hai, associate hai, common shareholding hai. What happens in that case? Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? People will have to start talking because this is a GD and we are here to only take opinions. I'm not the speaker. I'm the initiator who is supposed to summarize views at the end of the discussion.
And otherwise, I'll be the only beneficiary of the entire discussion.
Exactly. Anybody who would want to add to this discussion here?
There are a few people that I know, who are present out here. So I'll probably just Purvi ma'am is there. Govind Bhaiya is there. If you guys want to add anything, Vishnu Bhaiya is there. He can add, probably with his experience. Kshitij Bhaiya is there. I can see Kshitij here.
Okay. Okay, let's take your questions first. Number one is 185, section 185 is does not have any clause, does not have any exemption. Okay. So there is no exemption called body corporate. अगर मेरे shareholding में होगा तो I can advance loans if I don't have a body corporate shareholder. There is nothing in the body of section 185, right? An exemption was given to private companies by way of a notification. Okay.
Yeah.
Famous 5th June notification, right? So 5th June notification से हमने private companies को exemption दी, कहा कि 3 conditions fulfill कर लीजिए तो आप loans दे सकते हैं to your directors or related parties, right? One of those conditions was कि share holder कोई भी body corporate नहीं होना चाहिए. Okay. The other 2 conditions were that the borrowings have to be less than twice of the paid up capital of 50 crores, whichever is lower. And the third one is that the company must have never defaulted in repayment of any dues to banks and financial institutions. So three.
Ma'am, what was the second that you just said? The paid up capital wala? My borrowings. My borrowing should not be okay.
Cannot be less than should be less than twice of paid up or 50 crores, whichever is lower. Okay.
Yes.
When you satisfy these 3 conditions, you are supposed to be giving loans. You are exempted from the provisions of 185. You can. What happens if you are a body corporate who is who you are a company who has a body corporate as your shareholder? If something like this happens, first of all, you cannot advance any loan to your director, right? Or related party for that matter. अभी section 185 में जो exemptions आए हैं ना कि आप special resolution करके you can give it to some other company which is also involved in that same line of business and ऐसा करके जो वो subsections add हुए हैं, that is not giving you any leverage. Okay, so if you have a body corporate in your shareholders list and you have still gone ahead and given any loan, it is not compliance of section 185, right? बात कर रहे हो ना, वो पॉसिबली सेक्शन 186 वाला बात कर रहे हो कि अगर हमारा लिमिट्स क्रॉस हो जा रहा है तो आप स्पेशल रेजोल्यूशन एक पास कर ले, एमजीटी 14 लगा ले और फिर दे दे. That is okay, but 185 and 186 have to be taken. When we talk of 186, a lot of people confuse themselves by saying कि ये तो एक कंपनी दूसरे कंपनी को लोन देता है तभी एप्लीकेबल होता है. I've heard this so many times. Please do not confuse yourself with the name intercorporate loans. Generally section 186 जो है वो फेमस है इसी नाम से, intercorporate loans. ठीक है, तो वो नाम से क्या होता है कि हमें मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग हो जाती है कि दिस इज एप्लीकेबल टू ओनली कंपनी टू कंपनी लोन्स, whereas this is applicable to any kind of loan altogether. So now if you are giving any loan to any person also, कोई भी आउटसाइडर को आपने लोन दिया अपनी कंपनी से, तो 186 का कंप्लायंस इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है. इसमें एक चीज बहुत जरूरी है एज ऑडिटर्स कि आप बोलोगे कि व्हाट आर वी सपोज्ड टू बी चेकिंग व्हेन वी go into the company. As auditors, I think the first thing to do is take the list of directors, also their associate concerns or associated related parties. From where do we get that? अभी हर कंपनी में ना MVP 1 एक लेना चाहिए, लेते हैं कि नहीं लेते हैं, आई डोंट नो. प्राइवेट लिमिटेड में ठीक है, अभी ये लिस्ट जो होता है ये MVP 1 से आपको मिल जाना चाहिए आइडियली. Now when you get that list, you start looking for transactions with those parties particularly, and when you find those transactions, out of them, if anything is in the nature of loan, then you start hunting for compliance of 185 and 186. So 185 and 186 will become very important. Now let me put in a quick question here for the discussion of the audience. Let's say कि हमारे पास एक कंपनी ऑडिट के लिए आई है एंड हम उसका ऑडिट कर रहे हैं एंड हमने देखा है कि कंपनी ने लोन दिया है किसी और कंपनी को, राइट? एंड सेक्शन 186 का जो लिमिट्स है ना वो क्रॉस हो रहा है, बट कंपनी ने एसआर पास नहीं किया है. ठीक है, the question is that you are an auditor of a company which has given loan to another company during the year. You can see उनके डेटा से, right? But when you go through their records, you find out no special resolution was passed. Two questions I would want to ask. Number one, how would you find out whether a resolution was passed or not? Number two, what if the special resolution was not passed? What are your duties and responsibilities as an auditor? Okay, so food for thought, two quick questions. And if at all people in the audience would want to contribute to the discussion here. Anybody?
Sitej, you don't have to raise your hand. You can just unmute yourself and answer.
Please unmute
Okay,
yourself.
Yeah.
For every special resolution, I think we have to file MGT 14. So from MGT 14, we will know from companies' records that if MGT 14 is filed or not, that we'll know special resolution was passed or not. But I don't know what to do if special resolution is not passed. Then what should we do as an auditor?
Even Sunil Kumar Nataji has said the same thing. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, you see whether form
MGT
14, MGT 14 has been filed or not. Okay. तो ना इसमें ना एक प्रॉब्लम है, इसमें एक प्रॉब्लम और ये भी है कि MGT 14 लेट से नहीं लगा. ओके, ना देयर आर टू थिंग्स. एक है कि आपने स्पेशल रेजोल्यूशन ही पास नहीं करी, दूसरा है कि आपने पास करी है स्पेशल रेजोल्यूशन लेकिन आपने MGT 14 में लगाया. ठीक है, as an auditor, अभी आप मेरे को बोलोगे, a lot of people will agree in the house that most private limited companies do not have minutes, right? I hope we don't have anybody from the administration or the government here, but most companies do not have minutes, and we are preparing all the minutes on a retrospective method. Now, therefore, if I tell you कि practically as auditors we should look at the minutes and find out whether special resolution was passed, I think that is more impracticable, especially in case of private companies, closely held family companies. So best way is to find out whether MGT 14 was filed or not. Now let's say the MGT 14 was not filed and you are an auditor of that company. Caro अगर applicable है तो आपके पास you have that space to write, right? Because Caro is specifically asking कि whether provisions of 185 and 186 were fulfilled or not. So if Caro is applicable to a company, you have the jagah to write कि हाँ, this is where you will write that provisions of section 186 have not been followed by the company to the extent that special resolution was not passed, despite limits as prescribed under section 186 subsection 1 or 2 जो भी है were breached. ऐसा करके हम रिपोर्ट कर सकते हैं. Now let's say कि आपकी कंपनी है जिसमें कारो एप्लीकेबल नहीं है. अभी कारो अगर एप्लीकेबल नहीं है और आपने ये वायलेशन देखा है तो आप क्या करोगे? ऑडिटर है तो आपको कहीं तो इसको रिपोर्ट करना है. अभी कहाँ रिपोर्ट करेंगे इसको? ऑल्सो एक और इसको थोड़ा सा ट्विस्ट कर लेते हैं डिस्कशन को कि लेट्स से कि वो लोन साल के बीच में दिए थे और वो लोन खत्म हो गया 31 मार्च को. एज ऑडिटर्स वी फील वेरी हैप्पी. अगर ऐसा कुछ हो जाता है ना, दिस इज अ वेरी राहत की सांस कि 31 मार्च को आते आते ना वो लोन खत्म हो गया.
I think emphasis of matter paragraph.
EOM paragraph. Okay. Priyank ji saying EOM में रिपोर्ट कर देंगे. Anybody else? Anything else? Any other thing you can think of? If Caro is not applicable to us, small private limited company, no Caro, but loan दिया है in violation of the provisions of 186, in excess of those limits, then what do you do? Where do you write it? And
I think it's a qualification.
It's a qualification. Would you still stand on the qualification, sir, if the loan was squared off at the end of the year?
For a private limited company, no, but it should be. It should be mentioned in the qualification that the loan was squared off, but still during the year it was still a violation of the act. So any violation of the act is a qualification.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else who would want to put in their, thought on this? Any other thoughts?
Anil Anchalia bhaiya, if you want to add something.
Okay. Now see, from what I understand now, if special resolution is not passed, loans have been given in excess of the limits that have been allowed by section 186 and no MGT 14 has been filed. As auditor, this is definitely a reportable item. Okay. Now, Priyankji is also not correct, not incorrect when he says the emphasis of matter, and Kshitiji is also correct when he says qualification. Now, again, the concept of materiality will just barge in, right? So ऐसे 405 ऐसे 400 something के हिसाब से हमें materiality वापस देखने के लिए we'll have to go back to the books and see कि अभी कहीं ऐसा नहीं हो कि नेटवर्थ ही 1 करोड़ का है, हम लोन ही दे चुके हैं 1 करोड़ का, right? In excess of, in violating all section 186 and everything else, right? So you have to, as an auditor, ascertain the materiality. If you feel that the loan amount was so huge that it could have disrupted the entire financial position of the company, you would possibly go in for a qualification. But if you feel that it was a small loan squared off at the end of the year, you just draw the attention of the stakeholders by way of an EOM. If the loan is very huge, not squared off at the end of the year, you would possibly want to qualify your report. How much we would be comfortable in qualifying the report, that again is a big question mark. Right?
Ma'am, 186 is not applicable to NBFCs, right? I mean, whose primary
yes, not
activity is.
No. Right? So 185 and 186 are very, very confusing sections. If at all we are not well versed with Companies Act, generally हम नहीं काम करते Companies Act पे, तो 185, 186 से बहुत ज्यादा पाला नहीं भी पड़ता होगा. लेकिन as statutory auditors this year, 2 sections we will have to definitely go through and go, so that we know कि what are the limits, किसको लोन दे सकते हैं, किसको लोन नहीं दे सकते हैं, and what is going on. Okay.
Ma'am, I have another question. So, what happens is, so there are, say, a series of companies, right? मेरा खुद का 5 company है, for example, ठीक है? What happens these days is सारे में net banking नहीं रहता, ठीक है? So there are statutory payments that a company has to make. So what we do is we transfer that amount to a वो और फिर वो उसको payment कर देता है, ठीक है? Do we need to disclose that as well in the ESG 18 transaction? The payment was made only for statutory, remittances. ठीक है तो वो भी एक advance ही है कि मैंने आज दिया, probably हो सकता है you paid it tomorrow or say within a week or 10 days or whatever. ठीक है, whether that will also form a part of this.
See, to my understanding, no, because that is not really a loan. Okay. Also, we have to understand one more thing: 185 and 185. Yes, the nature. First of all, this is a reimbursable expenditure, right? And secondly, we have to be very, very careful with loans which are given to, loans given to your directors or related parties. Section 185 के जो parties हैं, उनको जब भी loan देते हैं, be very careful about the terms and conditions of that loan, because there is a separate, requirement, if I'm not wrong, in the additional regulatory information, जहां वो पूछ रहे हैं कि provide details of loans whose repayment terms have not been specified or which are repayable on demand, right? Also, if you are giving a loan without any interest, without charging any interest, right, this is also violation of 185, 186, because it is considered, terms are considered prejudicial to the company.
Ma'am, in case the advances, the loans are repayable on demand, right? Which happens in most private companies. What should be done? I mean, how should that be reported, or how to go about that?
See, mostly what is happening is that I am a director in my company. Okay, me and my husband are running a company. Both of us are directors. Taking this example from the last session also. Abhi, I told I go into the board of directors meeting and I tell कि you know I'm in need of money. आप एक बार मेरे को 10 लाख दे दीजिए कंपनी से. कंपनी ने मुझे 10 लाख दे दिए लोन. ठीक है. अभी कोई टर्म्स ऑफ रीपेमेंट कुछ भी डिसाइड नहीं हुआ है. तो दिस इज टेक्निकली अ लोन रीपेबल ऑन डिमांड. जब मेरे हस्बैंड बोलेंगे कि भाई कंपनी में पैसे का जरूरत है, तुम पैसा तो लौटा दो, मे बी आई विल हैव टू रीपे. I am not even under an obligation to repay because there is no terms and conditions written anywhere, right? So I am a related party because I'm a director. Loan has been given to me specifying no terms of repayment or specifying कि जब हम मांगेगा तुमको देना पड़ेगा. So that is repayable on demand. If something like this has happened, then first of all, this year in Schedule 3, we have a specific place to write this. Okay. Additional regulatory information where management has to clearly specify how much money they have, given like this, which has no terms attached to it. That is first of all disclosed. Secondly, when you give something like this, you as an auditor have to report in CARO if you feel any loan is prejudicial to the interest of the company. If you feel this loan is prejudicial to the interest of the company, you go ahead and report in CARO, stating no terms were specified, the loan has been outstanding for a period more than 10 years, etc. So we feel this loan had been given on terms which is prejudicial to the company. So as auditors, you have a lot of leverage this time to report on such transactions because the management has been mandated to report this in Schedule 3. पहले स्पेसिफिकली आपको बाहर कहीं भी नहीं मिलता था खोज के कि ऐसा कोई फिगर्स है क्या. And like it or not, most private limited companies have loans which do not have any terms of repayment attached. In fact, no interest is also charged on such loans. Under such circumstances, it becomes very, very difficult for auditors to report. And this time, जब कारो में specifically पूछेंगे कि whether compliance of 185 and 186 has been ensured, it is going to be very tricky.
Just for the benefit of the members, should I just share my screen for a moment?
Yes. Please.
Yeah. So I think what ma'am is saying is this, this table, right, ma'am?
Yes, very much.
So this is, what we need to add in the current year. Yes, ma'am. You can.
Just give me a minute. I was just checking the note if. Yes. So primarily the guidance note is also telling you to do this much only with section 186. Okay. Now, so now taking this forward to loans and advances taken. Now, when I say taken, this year another interesting thing. When I say loans and advances taken, charge creation for securities given against loans. अभी आप कोई भी लोन लोगे तो कोई ना कोई सिक्योरिटी तो डेफिनेटली दोगे, राइट? तो register of charges maintained under section 85 to be checked. The same should corroborate with register maintained in respect of the company by registrar in accordance with section 81. Okay. Now I'm talking of two registers here. Which are the two registers that I'm talking about? इसका बात भी क्यों करना है? पहली बात कि ये this is a new reporting requirement in Schedule 3 this time, right? Whether charges have been registered on all security, on all assets which have been provided as securities. Now, when I'm talking of this, I'm talking of two registers. Which are these two registers that we have to check as auditors? Anybody who would like to respond on this? ये जो अभी इस साल हमें ये रिपोर्ट करना है ना, there is a specific reporting in Schedule 3 stating कि whether charges have been registered or not. ऐसा करके एक reporting है. I think in the additional regulatory information section only. See, when we are talking of charge creation for securities given against loans, we have to understand that whenever we create a charge on any of our asset, we are mandated to create a charge on it, right? अब वो चार्ज कैसे क्रिएट करेंगे? चार्ज क्रिएट करेंगे फॉर्म CHG1 फाइल करके with the ROC, right? The moment I create a charge, the moment I file form CHG1, the registrar immediately takes note of it and puts it into his own register. That is a register which is section 81 talking about कि ROC वो register maintain करेगा आपके नाम पे, ठीक है? ROC हर कंपनी को उसका register दिखाता भी है. MCA portal पे index of charges जो मिलता है, that is our register maintained by the ROC. And one register we have to maintain as companies, which is the register of charges, right? So therefore, these two registers should always match with each other. Okay, and as auditors, I doubt if we have ever seen a register of charges of any company. In fact, if you would have gone and asked for a register of charges, the first thing we would possibly ask you is कि वो क्या होता है? Register of charges. And अगर वो आपसे पूछ लिया कि वो क्या होता है, पहले तो आप भी उसको समझाने लायक पोजीशन में हो कि नहीं हो, वो भी एक सोचने वाली बात है. एंड सेकेंडली कि अगर रजिस्टर ऑफ चार्जेस आपको मिल भी जाता है तो वो कितना अपडेटेड मिलेगा, उसमें भी बहुत बड़ा एक क्वेश्चन मार्क है. So therefore, you possibly would not find yourself relying too much on this register of charges which is maintained by your SSC company. So what is the way out? The only way out is that you take जितने भी लोन्स है वो सारे तो आपको बुक्स में दिखने ही है. टैली खोलोगे तो आपको लोन्स एक साथ दिख जाने हैं. सारे लोन्स के सैंक्शन लेटर्स ले लीजिए and ensure that you know what is the security that they have given, primary security as well as collateral security. And then check whether उतना अमाउंट का आपको इंडेक्स ऑफ चार्जेस में चार्ज दिख रहा है कि नहीं दिख रहा है, राइट? शेड्यूल 3 में there is a reporting requirement this time and they are saying कि please report whether charges have been registered or not. If not, give reasons why. So management तो reasons नहीं लिखेगा, reasons हम ही लिखेंगे. अभी reasons क्या टाइप के reasons हो सकते हैं? What do you think could be reasons for charge not registered? Priyanji, if you have the schedule 3 open in front of you, can you just have a quick scan?
Yes, ma'am.
I think there is a point on charges this time.
Ma'am, in Caro reporting or?
No, schedule 3.
Dilip Somani has said that charge was created and was satisfied long back, but satisfaction of charges was not done MCA side by bank. What is the implication and how to report?
Charge was created, was satisfied long back, but satisfaction of charges was not done. MCA side by bank. So, सबसे पहली बात कि बैंक कभी भी satisfaction अपलोड करवाता नहीं है. जो लोन की satisfaction है वो SSC को ही करवानी पड़ती है. So your company will only have to file the relevant form, that is CHG4, with the ROC to get the charge satisfied. अभी आपके केस में अगर satisfaction long back हो गया है तो you would have to possibly go in for a condonation of delay, or you take a no due certificate which is of a current date. That is a more jugaru option that you have. Yes. दिलीप जी, अगर आप if there is anything that you add on, आप unmute करके भी बोल सकते हो सर.
No, the second second option is better.
हाँ.
Only of recent date we can have the satisfaction of charge from the bank that we can obtain and we can upload it.
Yes, just ensure that you don't have the date written of.
Yeah, date should not be there actually.
The actual date of closure of account.
Yes.
Otherwise, the satisfaction, the bank will never get it filed. We'll only have to get the CHG4 done.
Right. Thank you.
In Schedule 3, what I can see is registration of charges or satisfaction,
Yes.
where any charges or satisfaction yet to be registered with ROC beyond the statutory period, details and reasons thereof shall be disclosed.
Very nice. Yes, this was a clause that is that I remember. The Schedule 3 में ये एक नया clause है, बिल्कुल fresh, out of the oven. Now, how is it impacting us as auditors? क्योंकि बैलेंस शीट तो आप ही बनाओगे, तो बैलेंस शीट जब बनाएंगे तो हमें ये लिखना होगा कि चार्जेस रजिस्टर्ड नहीं है. चार्जेस रजिस्टर्ड है भी कि नहीं, ये हम कैसे फाइंड आउट करेंगे? लोन से फाइंड आउट करेंगे. लोन का अमाउंट बुक कितना है वो आपका इंडेक्स से कभी भी मैच नहीं होगा. सो डोंट स्टार्ट टू बैंग योर हेड विद दैट. आई एम श्योर ऑल ऑफ अस नो दिस कि जो लोन अमाउंट आपके इंडेक्स में है और जो लोन अमाउंट बुक्स में होगा, दैट विल नॉट मैच. You will have to just know कि हाँ ये लोन ही ये लोन है. So you will have to create that nexus. Now, if a loan has not been registered, what is the way out and what are reasons that we could give? We have another question here, whether bank overdraft taken against pledging of fixed deposit is required to be registered. So pledge के against में लिया हुआ को register करने की जरूरत नहीं है. CAG 1 में specifically बोलते हैं lien not being pledged. अगर pledge है तो फिर आप CAG 1 नहीं भी create करते हो तो होता है. क्योंकि आप देखोगे CAG 1 में स्पेसिफिकली एक्सक्लूड करते हैं, वहां पे ब्रैकेट में लिखा ही होता है नॉट बीइंग प्लेज. सो इफ यू हैव एक्चुअली प्लेज्ड तो आप CAG 1 नहीं भी लगाओगे तो चलेगा. Okay, so tell me something. I can see Dilip ji, Amit ji responding with questions. Sir, we would also like if you could add to opinions. Abhi, what in your opinion could be reasons why a charge would not be registered with the ROC? And if अगर सही में register नहीं हुआ होगा, समझ लीजिए कि कोई लोन है बहुत ज्यादा पुराना है और अभी because ये requirement आया, we have started to look for. ऐसा हो सकता है कि as auditors we have never checked the index of charges also. This year we are going to check the index of charges, and this year we realize that a few loans have not been reflecting in the index of charges. As auditors, you are not supposed to report this anywhere, but as management, इसका reasons जो है वो हम क्या reasons दे सकते हैं, and क्यों आपको लगता है कि charge नहीं register हुआ होगा? What are possible reasons that you would write in your financial statements?
Dilip ji, Amit ji, you can unmute yourself and you can answer to the queries.
देखिए, पहले यदि चार्ज रजिस्ट्रेशन नहीं हुआ है और ROC साइट में नहीं है, then we can skip. If suppose it is satisfied, that part is okay. But suppose still it is existing, then definitely we have to report it this year.
Sir, this year reporting तो है, and reporting में they are asking for reasons also. तो sir reasons क्या देंगे इसमें अपने?
Reasons तो अभी है कि अब normally banks they do not cooperate because digital DSC and others they do not know, and the client also does not know, and as an auditor sometimes we also omit this particular aspect also. We never look into that aspect. What you have mentioned that whether it is registered or not, that we have to verify with the MCA side, and we have to verify that with our register of charges. So normally this part sometimes is overlooked by the CAG also.
Very seldom you will find the register of charges updated, sir. Ye information mostly we will have to pull out from books of accounts only.
That we have to think over, because this is earlier why it was not reported. That type of question may come also.
Yes.
Because this thing existed in the earlier years.
Right, sir.
This we have to think over actually. Right now, not in a position, but we have to think over. But
there are a couple of points in the chat box, ma'am. Lokesh Mitra ji asks, can a company take loan and also give loan at the same time? And Mr. Praveer Kashyap, he states rather that financial institutions are very hawkish nowadays in getting the charges registered.
Okay. Lokesh ji, pehli baat, can a company take loan and also give loan at the same time? logically, if you ask me, ideally, I would not prefer my company to be leveraged and also to be advancing loans. अगर मेरे पास खुद के पास पैसे नहीं है, तो I don't want to give loans, really. But then, of course, there is no statutory bar on, taking loans or giving loans. Even if you have taken loans, you can give loans. जो 185 का exemption का बात कर रहे हैं हम, वो इसीलिए उसमें जो सेकंड पॉइंट है, आप देखिएगा कि आपकी बोरोइंग्स ट्वाइस ऑफ योर पेड अप कैपिटल या 50 करोड़ के नीचे होनी चाहिए. वो इसीलिए दे वर एंश्योरिंग कि आप बहुत ज्यादा लेवरेज ले लो खुद ही, एंड देन आप वो पैसे बांटे जा रहे हैं मार्केट में, तो वो सही नहीं है. तो इसीलिए देयरफॉर वो कैप वहां रखा गया है कि रिलेटेड पार्टीज को ऐसा नहीं हो कि डाइवर्जन ऑफ फंड्स हो जाए. तो दिस काइंड ऑफ अ कैप हैज बीन गिवन इन दैट provision. So you can definitely give loan and take loan at the same time, but a lot of places there are certain caps. Okay. And section 186 may also there is a cap. So they have placed caps here and there in the act, and that is only to ensure that a very highly leveraged company does not extend too much loan, and more so specifically to related parties. That is only to curb diversion of funds, right? Any NBFC violation for this? NBFCs, I'm not sure about the question. Any NBFC violation in the sense that a company which is an NBFC can do this or not? Is this the question?
Hello. Audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Lokesh.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask कि मतलब if I give loan and if I take loan, मतलब am I not required to register with the RBI or something like that? Will it be fine if I am taking loan and giving loans, मतलब without obtaining the certificate of RBI without obtaining NBFC certificate?
सर 45 IA आपको चेक करना पड़ेगा. अगर 45 IA में आप फॉल हो जाते हो तो आपको NBFC लेना है रजिस्ट्रेशन. अगर आप सिर्फ लोन लेते हो देते हो, प्राइमरी बिजनेस कुछ और है, आप समझ लीजिए कि आपकी एक राइस मिल है एंड मैन्युफैक्चरिंग चल रही है, इसी बीच आप लोन लिए हो एंड आपके कुछ डायरेक्टर्स ने लोन मांगा है, आपने उनको भी दे दिया है, ठीक है, बट आपका प्राइमरी बिजनेस बिल्कुल अलग है, चल रहा है, तो देयरफॉर आप 45 IA शायद वायलेट नहीं करोगे, तो आपको NBFC रजिस्ट्रेशन लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. बट अगर आपका पूरा इनकम का एक सर्टेन ह्यूज चंक, आई थिंक 45 IA टॉक्स अबाउट दैट ओनली.
Yeah, so it's basically 50% of your financial assets and 50% of financial income. अगर वो twin condition satisfying होता है, then you have to register yourself with the RBI and become an NBFC. If that is not, done, then you're in violation. अगर आपका से 10% खाली इंटरेस्ट इनकम है और आपका 12% या 15% आपका फाइनेंशियल एसेट्स है, then you are fine. I mean, it is not a problem.
Correct. So therefore, सिर्फ लोन देना या लेना only by dint of that आपको NBFC लेना जरूरी नहीं है. 45 IA आप अगर हिट करते हो तो आपको NBFC का लाइसेंस लेना जरूरी है.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right. Prabir Kashyap ji ने बोला है financial institutions very hawkish nowadays in getting charges registered. Now, sir, there is a practical problem in the act also, and there is a there is a blockage that has been created. I'll just hint upon this. Register of charges में charges register करने के लिए पहले हमें 300 days होते थे. अभी क्या है, उसको बीच में जब अमेंडमेंट एक्ट आया था तो उसको हमने चेंज किया, उसको बोला कि फर्स्ट 60 days एंड देन अनदर 60 days एड वैलोरम फीस देके आप चार्ज को रजिस्टर कर सकते हो. Ad valorem means the ROC fixes the value, how much he will charge and how much the ministry is going to charge, and you will pay. Generally it is a standardized rate only. So effectively you have 120 days to file any charge. पहले क्या होता था, अगर चार्ज आपका टाइम से नहीं फाइल होता था ना, तो आपके पास condonation, you had the option of condonation. And who was doing the condonation? Condonation was done by the central government. Delegated powers were vested with regional directors, respective. So you would go to the respective regional director, file in a petition for condonation of delay in registering your charge, and he would condone it, and then you would go ahead filing your charge, condonation fees pay करके. अभी 120 days के बाद, do you have this option of condonation left with you? Anybody? अभी जो प्रवीर जी ने बोला, what Prabir ji was saying is saying, and what Dilip ji was also saying was correct. A lot of banks or financial institutions fail to understand digital signature requirements. Their system will not work. The form gets corrupt when we send it to the bank's server. All these practical problems, all of us are aware of. Now, assuming ये सब करते 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 120 दिन पार हो गए. Now, what if 120 days have passed and the charge was not registered? Do you have an option to advise your client to go in for a condonation before the regional director? So instances of non-satisfaction are much higher than registration. Okay. I think satisfaction is a more is an easier propaganda than registration, isn't it? In a way, yes, what you are saying is correct, Prabir ji. Non-satisfaction is a higher rate than non-registration, because nowadays most banks have become vigilant themselves, and one of their pre-disbursement conditions is also registration of charge with the ROC. So therefore, registration आजकल छूटता नहीं है generally, but satisfaction छूट जाता है because वो client has to keep track कि no due certificate जैसे बैंक से आए तो हमें we have to file the form CSG4. So non-registration cases are definitely lower. But then if at all your charge has not been registered, beyond 120 days, now we do not have an option to register our charge. Because the act has been modified, I think in the last amendment act 2019 वाले में, and जो charge वाला section है, वो charge वाला section को वहाँ पे change किया है. तो जो condonation pass है वो RD के हाथों से चला गया है. अभी most RDs are of the opinion that the condonation cannot be done by them. So there has been like a legislative deadlock here, and most cases में registration beyond 120 days have not been done now. So where there are reasons like this, कि legislative roadblock के चक्कर में we have not been able to file our return, file our charge. So the balance sheet में there has to be a specific disclosure of this. But then the management has to explain. As auditors, we have to be 100% sure that we are going through these financial statements and ensuring that these disclosures are there this year. Because if these disclosures are not there, be very, very sure of getting a section 206 notice for non-disclosure of required items in your financial statements. So the next is whether the company has defaulted in repayment of loans or other borrowings, or in the payment of any interest to any lender. So we have to all check whether repayment is done timely or not. Diversion of funds, short-term versus long-term diversion of funds needs to be checked. Now, this is a very, very interesting proposition that auditors have been put this time, and they are asked to comment also that whether short-term, whether long-term funds have been used for short-term purposes or vice versa. I'll just give in a food for thought for the audience to discuss here. That, for example, my company has been sanctioned a huge loan, and at the year end, very close to the fag end of the year. And so therefore, understanding that I will not be utilizing this fund now, I have gone in and made an FD out of it. FD of, let's say, 1 month. Would we call this as diversion of funds? Because there is definitely a change in the application of fund. Or let's say we have been sanctioned a working capital limit, and like we all know, nowadays banks do not prefer companies to keep a separate current account. They want them to have only one CC account. So out of that CC account, I have gone in to purchase furniture and laptops, etc., fixed assets for my office also, which are now long-term applications. Would this be also diversion of funds, and would it be reportable? Tushar Goenka says no. Okay. No means these are not diversion of funds, but are they not reportable?
Mr. Kashyap says again, you have to see the materiality.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else who wants to add to this? First of all, are these examples diversion of funds or not? No diversion, purchase for business purpose. Okay. Now, the first example where we have been sanctioned a loan. Abhi COVID ke time pe na, this was a very common proposition. So most companies had loans, term loans, etc. And because of COVID, the funds were not getting utilized, and therefore a lot of people preferred to, a lot of people preferred to, park those funds in a FD account or invest those funds somewhere on a short-term basis so that kuch to returns aa jaye usse, right? Or yeah, so let's say you are a company at the end of the year, fag end of the year, एक huge amount आया, अभी आपको लग रहा है कि immediately project शुरू नहीं होने वाला है, rainy season है, तो आपने उसको एक 89 days का एक FD बना दिया. Now see, these are diversion of funds for sure. Okay. Now we have to understand that diversion of funds bolte our mind should not start thinking negatively. Whenever we say diversion of funds or misapplication, I would not use the word misapplication, I would say inter-application of funds. Long term को short term के लिए use किया, short term को long term के लिए use किया. Whenever there is an interchangeability, it is definitely diversion. Now diversion need not always necessarily mean in the negative sense, right? So, but if you have used long-term funds for short-term purposes, it is definitely reportable. तो आपको रिपोर्ट तो करना ही है कि short because funds were issued, funds were made available at the fag end of the year, and because of no foreseeable projects in hand, the funds were invested in short-term funds. So these kind of a disclosure will always be there, and if the auditor is satisfied, it need not report. If the auditor is not satisfied, and जैसे प्रदीप जी ने बोला, अगर materiality hit हो रहा है, and you are an auditor, you have applied your audit procedures, and you have realized that there is indeed a diversion of funds, you would go ahead and report. The management responsibility, to management cannot absolve itself of its responsibility of not reporting here. Diversion does not always mean negative diversion. कि भाई हमने fraudulently we have diverted the funds to our relatives, etc. It does not always mean like that, right? So therefore, this will be reportable. Now, whether the company has taken any loans from any entities to fulfill obligations of subsidiaries, associates, or joint ventures. Now, to find this out as auditors, we will have to see where the money has been actually used. तो ये जो दो clauses है, इस बार के audit में loan account को थोड़ा scrutiny करेंगे तो हमारा दोनों purpose solve हो जाएगा. Now, whether the company has raised loans during the year on the pledge of securities held in its subsidiaries, joint ventures, or associates, I have already said whenever we have taken loans, the company has taken any loans, the loan document has to be thoroughly scrutinized. And we should hold a copy of the sanction letter for sure in our audit documentation files. Now, if we see in our sanction letters, in the sanction letters that any, have been pledged, etc., we have to see whether those securities are of companies which are our subsidiaries, joint ventures, or associates. If that is the case, we have to report. I mean, the management has to report, right? And Rule 11 का जो loans and advances received में था, वही same चीज loans and advances given में था, वैसा ही कुछ taken में भी है. अगर हमने किसी से लोन लिया है as intermediary, किसी ने हमें लोन दिया है and हमने उसको आगे बढ़ाया है, किसी और को लोन दिया है, but ultimate beneficiary company A ही है. In that case, we are acting as intermediary and that is reportable. As an auditor, how would you check this kind of a transaction? That would need a little more brainstorming from everybody. What will be the procedures and how you would establish that you have, that your client company has acted as an intermediary. Right? Okay. If there are no questions to be asked or nothing to add on this point, we will move further from loans and advances taken.
I think we can, we can move to the next one.
Right. See, deposits are very close to loans and advances taken only. So we've kept the next point as deposits. I mean, deposits ka jo section hai na, we've always ignored that section. Okay. And this time the balance sheet has been redone. The schedule 3 has been redone in such a way that if you do not have a holistic knowledge of Companies Act, you are in a very bad situation. Okay, so as auditors, if we have been those traditional practitioners who know income tax and GST or financial figures जब correct हो गए हैं, तो balance sheet जब match हो गया है, we are happy कि balance sheet बन गया. वो दिन चले गए अब sir. Those days are far gone by, especially in case of companies. Now in terms of companies, सिर्फ GST या income tax मिला के balance sheet बना लेने से हमारा काम खत्म नहीं होगा, because we all know कि balance sheet बनाता कौन है. Now जब बैलेंस शीट हम बनाएंगे और कल को जब 2064 का नोटिस आएगा और क्लाइंट के पास जब वो नोटिस आएगा कि आपके बैलेंस शीट में ये सारे डिस्क्लोजर्स नहीं है, वो सीधे आके आपको ही बोलेगा कि बैलेंस शीट तो आपने ही बनाया था, राइट? सो नाउ इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट दैट what you have to write, where you have to write. For that, you have to have very, very holistic knowledge of the Companies Act now. Now, deposits is a section which we all have been ignoring. I'm sure so many of us must have left this chapter during our corporate law papers in CA final also, because this seems to be one of the most confusing sections of the Act. But recently, there has been a lot of focus of the ministry on deposits slowly. As auditors, what is the best way to identify deposits? How would you as an auditor go about it? If people in the audience can enlighten on this, we could have a small discussion. How do you think? Please unmute yourself and talk. I think that is the best way to go about it, instead of putting it in your chat boxes. How as an auditor would you want to identify? Would you think? Do you think you will identify deposits? And what else? What are the audit procedures you would want to follow?
Tushar ji, you want to add something?
डिपॉजिट्स अभी इस साल जब ऑडिट करना शुरू करेंगे, टैली डेटा आ गया, डिपॉजिट्स का सेक्शन हम सब छोड़ के चले जाते थे कॉर्पोरेट लॉ के पेपर में. अभी जब डिपॉजिट्स आइडेंटिफाई करना है हमें एज ऑडिटर्स, समझ लीजिए, या एज पीपल हु आर ड्राफ्टिंग द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स, or officially as people who are checking the financial statements, how would you identify deposits?
Amit Sarabji says that we have to reconcile the data with DPT3, obviously.
We have to reconcile data with DPT3. Okay, very well. DPT3 के साथ data हम reconcile कर लेंगे, but DPT3 का भी 2-3 issue है, which we all understand. And number one, the problem with DPT3 is that DPT3 का due dates are, I think, within 30
June, yeah.
30 June. अभी 30 June जब उसका last date है, तो I am sure कि most private companies का audit तब तक होता ही नहीं है. तो जो DPT3 का जो figures जाता है, most of the figures are not available. First of all, especially the most crucial figure, advance from customers, is never available by 30th of June. At least that's the practical problem that I have been facing with my corporate clients, right? You do not have audited books by then, first of all. Secondly, even if you have audited books, you don't have the aging. Mostly you will not have the audited figures. So what we generally do, we ask, loan है कोई, loan है, किससे है, उतना अमाउंट, खाली लोन का बैलेंस बता दीजिए. वो बैलेंस वो बता देते हैं, DPT3 में हम डाल देते हैं, राइट? बैलेंस बता के DPT3 लग गया. अभी जो DPT3 भी जो लगा है ना, I as an auditor would not want to rely on a DPT3. First of all, because most of the DPT3 are based on unaudited figures. Secondly, if you rely on a DPT3 alone, I would prefer an ulta procedure. I would want to do the procedure on the books of accounts rather than on the DPT3, right? So when I'm doing that procedure on the books of accounts, how do you think you will identify what are deposits? I think what I would want to do with the books of accounts the moment I get it in respect of deposits is to see what are the amounts that we have received, first of all, right? Opening balances of such ledgers and what are the amounts that we've received during the year. And then we start to bifurcate and see what are deposits and what are not deposits, right? So in order to be able to comment on this deposits bit, we have to understand that certain amounts are not deposits and certain the common hai, we all know trade deposits are not considered deposits, loan from directors are not considered deposits, directors or relatives, so long as he gives a declaration that he has not borrowed money and given this money to the bank. So these kind of figures are not deposits, that we all understand. Loan taken from one company, loan taken by one company from another company is not deposit. Any advance from customers which has been adjusted within 12 months is not deposits. So all this we understand कि वो सब deposits नहीं है. Now tell me something. This is my personal question to the audience, and I hope I will get an answer to this because I don't have an answer to this question myself. What if the company has taken a loan from shareholder? As per the deposit rules, a private limited company can take loan from shareholders, right? पहले उसमें एक लिमिट था कि 100% ऑफ पेड अप एंड फ्री रिजर्व्स तक का ही आप लोन ले सकते हो या ऐसा कुछ एक लिमिट था. अभी वो लिमिट भी बीच में हटा दिया था. There was an exemption to private limited companies, right? Now all this exemption, no, this has been given in the deposit rules only. So should I tend to believe that a loan from shareholder is an exempt deposit? If it is an exempt deposit, but it is still a deposit, how do you report it in form DPT3? मैंने पहले डिस्क्लेमर दे दिया, इस क्वेश्चन का आंसर मेरे पास है नहीं. This is my also problem. This is my question that has remained unresolved, and therefore I'm putting it forward in this house today so as to receive discussions and answers to my query. Seniors, I'm sure there are a lot of seniors in the house. I would be really obliged if I could find any answer to this query. So loan from shareholder is a deposit from my understanding of the section on deposits, and but it is an exempt deposit if you are a private company and you satisfy certain conditions. But how do you report this in DPT3? And what if I don't report it in DPT3? Do we have any views? Anyone who would want to contribute to this discussion here?
I can't see anywhere, ma'am, that we can probably report this. Just trying to see the form, but again, director के लिए जगह है, but there is no option for any other वैसा वाला में.
And I'm sure that a lot of companies, a huge number of companies that we all audit will have such loans from shareholders, but not from directors. I mean, people who are shareholders. If the loan taken is not a deposit, Pradeep ji, from what my understanding of the section goes, loan from shareholder is a deposit. उसपे exemption दिया है कि भाई आप फिर भी ले सकते हो ये deposit to this extent without complying. वो जो advertisement करना होता है, ये सब जो करना होता है. Loan received from shareholder is exempt, but three certain conditions are there, okay, and yes, it is a deposit. I think loan from shareholder is deposit. Auditor certificate is required for DPT. In the report, it is related with RBI part. So, ये deposit तो है, and ये exempt deposit है.
Deposit
on the same page. But the problem is there is no place in DPT where you can report this. So this has been going unreported, and if it continues to go unreported tomorrow, what is going to be the ROC's take on this is something that needs to that needs some brainstorming. This is one answer that I have still not received from a satisfactory answer. We've not been able to do anything about this.
Pradeep ji, why will RBI be, a part of it? I mean, in the report, it is related with RBI part. If you can unmute yourself and, just probably, throw some light on this. And as far as DPT3 is concerned, I don't think there's an auditor certificate required, is it?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Pradeep.
Actually, in the report, we have to mention that whether any report has been taken and whether the company has complied with this RBI deposit rules. Since it is exempted from the RBI deposit rule, so I think it is not required. And not to be reported in DPT. This is my opinion.
To my knowledge, RBI will not come in the picture. I mean, Swati ma'am can probably throw some light on it, but RBI per se will, not come in the picture in this.
See, so far as reporting is concerned, we have to mention that whether the company has complied with the acceptance of deposit rules 2014 or something according to the RBI. So in that case, if this audit part is directly related with the following of RBI deposit rules, this is my perception.
These are companies acceptance deposit rules. I mean,
yeah, company acceptance deposit rule. So this is governed by RBI rules.
Okay.
So basically, in the report, they are asking whether the company has taken any deposit and complied with the RBI. If it is an exempt deposit, then there is no need to report that.
Not sure. Swati ma'am, if you can.
To my understanding, sir, there is no involvement of RBI in the whole picture because deposit rules are not prescribed by RBI. Rules are as per the Companies Act, right? And DPT3 में इसको report नहीं कर पा रहे हैं because we are taking loans and we are availing exemption which was given to us by virtue of the 5th June notification, which was exempting us based on 3 conditions. अभी वो 3 conditions fulfill करके हम shareholder से loan तो ले लेते हैं, but that still does not bring that loan out of the definition of deposits. Right?
So in that case, it should be reported in DPT3.
Correct, sir. But then there is no place.
There is no place. Yeah, that is the question. That there is no place to report as such because कहीं shareholder कहीं पे भी word use नहीं किया है.
Yes.
Shareholder से हमने पैसा लिया है, वो वाला point कहीं पे mention नहीं है. And there is no place also जहाँ पे any other amount या वैसा भी अगर कहीं होता ना कि और कहीं नहीं है तो आप इधर डाल दो, वैसा भी कोई एक particular जगह नहीं है DPT3 में कि अगर और कहीं नहीं है तो आप ये वाला पॉइंट में डाल दो इसको.
अदर्स का कोई भी कॉलम नहीं है.
अदर का कोई पॉइंट नहीं है, अदर का कोई कॉलम नहीं है.
A few articles on the internet they say कि आप remote button 2 या 4 select कर लो, but आप 2 या 4 जब भी select करते हो DPT पे, तो there are a lot of other things that they ask. Tushar ji ने देखा है, can we show it as an attachment in the form? See, most people are doing this. Most people are writing, as an attachment. दिलीप जी आप कुछ ऐड करना चाह रहे हैं?
इसको हम लोग ऐसा कर सकते हैं क्या, नोट्स ऑन अकाउंट्स में ये दे दिए कि ठीक है, दिस इज एग्जेम्प्टेड डिपॉजिट, इट इज नॉट कंसीडर्ड एज डिपॉजिट, दैट्स व्हाई इट इज नॉट रिपोर्टेड इन DPT3, and with reference that the auditor will report.
सर नोट्स टू अकाउंट्स में हम कर सकते हैं, लेकिन बात ये है कि वो डीपीटी का whenever we are expecting a notice on DPT, that ROC will possibly not go to corroborate your financial statement also. Of course, in our plea we can always write that the management has disclosed this fact that there is no place in DPT3, or because this was an exempt deposit, we have not reported this in form DPT3. The fact has been mentioned in the annual statement. There is no writing this in the notes, sir.
Notes in the, we can mention.
Yes, we can, definitely, we can. But some people might have a contrary view also. कि भाई ready-made क्यों लिख के दे ROC को कि भाई ये problem है. You know, some people might have a contrary view to this.
And even if the deposit is exempted, we are still required to file DPT3. I mean,
We are required to file DPT3. The problem is where? Where do you file? Where do you write?
I understood that. I was just asking, answering to the question that अगर खाली exempted deposits भी है तो भी DPT3
भी
को
हाँ,
नहीं पड़ेगा.
डालना तो है.
It is not that कि exempted deposits है तो DPT3 file करने का जरूरत नहीं है. That is not the case.
Okay, so this time deposits will become more crucial. Okay, DPT3 के साथ reconciliation and understanding ki what are deposits and what are not deposits. There's a huge list. Okay, can we show it as an attachment? To be on the safe side, can be disclosed in an attachment? Yes, you can always write it in the attachment to DPT. Okay, to determine so deposits will become important. There's a long list. जो DPT form का list है ultimately वही लिस्ट हमको ध्यान में रखना है जब हम ऑडिट करते हैं ताकि हमें पता चले कि कौन सा डिपॉजिट है और कौन सा नहीं है, राइट? कोई एडवांस फ्रॉम कस्टमर्स है जो सालों से चलता आ रहा है बट डीपीटी में कभी रिपोर्टेड नहीं है. दीज आर ऑल नॉन वायलेशंस व्हिच वी हैव टू टेक केयर नाउ. We have to understand that advance from customers not adjusted within 12 months is deposits, is considered deposits. So deemed deposits का जो concept है, that has to be very, very clear to all of us as auditors now. Right? Cost records को लेके भी ना, there is a lot of discussion this time. These discussions were there earlier also. I just put this point to only raise one thing in the house is कि a lot of times cost records are becoming applicable to a lot of companies, okay, and we are not even aware because हम वो HSN कभी check नहीं करते हैं. ये जो rules है companies cost record rules, उस rules पे जाइए, वहाँ पे एक list है. There is a proper list containing the HSN also of items. Please, if you are a manufacturing concern auditor, always ensure that your client has checked in that list that HSN that they are dealing in is falling in that list or not. If the HSN is not falling in that list, fair enough. But if it is falling, you are liable to maintain cost records. I'm saying this with personal experience because we've also missed out on cost auditing and account keeping for a few companies. And when this year we started to check, we realized that, oh, these are companies which are necessary, which are required to maintain cost records. हमें जब हम पढ़ते हैं ना कि whether maintenance of cost records has been specified by the central government or not, we generally feel or the general idea is among especially the younger fresher chartered accountants is कि शायद central government आपको specifically एक notice भेजता है कि cost audit is applicable to you या cost records are maintainability are applicable to you. But in some cases, but that is not the case. अभी rules में एक specific list है. There is an HSN list. And you, if you are the auditor of a manufacturing concern, advise your client to search that HSN list and see if his HSN, if the product HSN that they deal in falls in that list. If it falls, cost record keeping and audit, वो करना ही है आपको.
And also, ma'am, there is one more point कि एक particular product के लिए if your turnover crosses 25 CR or 50 CR, something of that sort, in that case also, you become applicable for cost audit. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so cost records, I think we have always ignored. We've always assumed कि cost records हमें applicable नहीं होगा. But most common industries पे भी ना cost records applicable है. Therefore, I wanted to raise this point. Very, very common industries like somebody making galvanized steel, galvanized sheets. Okay, these are very, very common industries. Now, galvanized sheets बनाने वाला बंदा जो है, हम लोग हमेशा से assume कर लेते तो कारों में point blank लिख देते no cost records have been specified. But when we went on to search this time, the one I was talking about was a galvanized sheet manufacturer. When we went on to check the HSN, we were utterly surprised to see that वो HSN था उस list में. तो cost records applicable है उस company पे. And cost audit भी applicable है क्योंकि उनका turnover ज़्यादा है, more than 35 or 50, whatever is the limit for audit. Right? So cost records पे report करने से पहले be very, very sure, double sure on cost records. Right? Before I move further, one more thing I would like to ask the audience. I mean, just a food for thought. Quick question. let's say that the company has taken loan from a director, okay, and so therefore this year, as on 31st March, the loan is a loan from director, right? And it is a it is a exempt deposit, right? Because loan from director or relative is allowed so far a declaration is given by the director. As an auditor, it is, what are your audit procedures? The most important audit procedure is whether that declaration is there or not with the company, right? आपके company के files में वो declaration that the loan that the director advanced to you was not out of borrowed funds. This declaration, please make sure that the company has. If you have treated the loan as a exempt deposit. Now let's go further. Let's go to the next year. Next year आप फिर audit कर रहे हो. अभी तक ना वो director must have resigned. The director resigned, but the loan is still continuing. Now this year, what is the problem?
He becomes an individual, and company normally cannot take, I think, a loan from an individual, something like that. It probably becomes, yeah, I think it will become a deposit.
It will become a deposit. I think Tushar says continue to be exempt deposit. Anybody else? At the time of accepting deposit was a director, okay? Continue to be exempt deposit, okay? The feeling in the houses, it continues to be exempt deposit, they are correct. Because the loan at the time that it was taken, the person was a director, right? So therefore, it continues to be exempt deposit. Even if next year that person has resigned as director, okay? So the loan still continues to be an exempt deposit. Okay, one more thing, one small thing before I would want to finish the deposit part. There are a lot of companies I have seen where loans from HUFs have been taken, right? Can HUF be treated as a relative of a director? Question being that the director is the karta of that HUF. Lokesh says no, HUF is not a related party. In that case, what happens to these loans? These are deposits then and reportable in form DPT 3. We have seen instances where money is coming from the HUF account, but the account has been booked in the company's books as in the name of the karta. Right? We have to understand that in loans, there is no beneficial ownership like in the case of shares. Okay. So loan from HUF cannot be booked in the name of karta, number one. Number two, loan from HUF is not loan from director or relative of director. So therefore, it is a deposit. Unless and until your HUF is a shareholder in your company, and that is a shareholder loan. But even if it is a shareholder loan, it still continues to be a deposit. So therefore, an HUF loan can never be an exempt deposit unless the HUF is a shareholder. It is always a deposit, right? So HUF ka loans are very common loans, which we keep finding in a lot of company balance sheets. If you happen to find such a loan, that is not a loan from director or relative of director, because an HUF cannot be termed as relative of director. Okay. Now, next point is preferential allotment. Now, this
Swati, I have a question. Actually, we face like it's a practical problem, like in automobile industry and jewelry industry. Like we receive money from customers for as like advance booking, but then they give the money and they do not come for more than 1 year also. Like they will buy later when they want to buy. So this kind of deposit certain like if the amount is not huge, it's like 2,000, 3,000 rupees. And but it's pending for like more than 1 year. It is like so what can be the solution? How can the company, because if we declare it as deposits in private limited company, then it will be a non-violation.
No, so basically what is happening is this 2,000 or 3,000 rupees you are telling me is advance booking
From
amount?
customers. Yeah, booking amount sort of. But it's like, they give the booking amount and the customers are then not available. They do not buy the car or they do not buy the jewelry, or they will come after some time later. So because the company also cannot identify like where to go and return the money.
Okay.
So it is like, and if we combine like multiple people, then the amount comes out huge. So how do we report these how do we tackle such instances?
See, if you have advances which are lying with you, see, this is ultimately an advance from customer.
Yeah.
Or not. Okay. And since you're telling me that the amount is huge in, cumulatively, even if the amount is not huge, the amount still would qualify to be a deposit. Okay. Now,
Okay.
if it is a deposit, you have to report this in Form DPT-3. Now, how would you want to tackle it will depend on, even if you change the classification of the whole thing, you cannot treat this as security deposit for sure, or treat this as a trade deposit also. So going by what you are saying, I don't think you can think of even reclassifying this amount into right? So therefore, this definitely falls into your definition of DPT. But then again, that same issue will start, that when you fill this in Form DPT-3, it will ask you for a variety of things. How did you advertise, date of advertisement, date of passing special resolution. So this is a technical defect, the technical problem in the form that will start to arise.
Yeah, because there is no advertisement or something. It is just like an advance amount.
Right, I understood. But the problem is that, again, the problem is in filling the form. We all agree deposit, but how you will fill the form is still an issue. It is just like the loan from shareholder bit that we were discussing.
Yeah.
Right. Anybody else, anyone else has any views on this who can contribute what we can do to switch balances? Satyajit ji, good afternoon. If you would want to add something. Can we have any other views on this?
Ramatar Joshi ji says small amount can be written back.
Can I say something?
Sir, please, sir.
Madam, generally, previously, the companies were taking the advances or booking amount from the customer in case of jewelry companies, jewelry units. Now they have stopped. Even if some 2,000, 3,000 rupees they are giving, if they do not come in a year, we can write back the amount as so as income. In some cases, the customer comes later on. We can give a discount to them for that amount. Otherwise, it will be difficult to show in the as a deposit.
Very true, sir. I'm trying to think in the same way. It is better to offer it for taxation. I mean, offer the income for taxation.
Yeah, rather than getting penalized.
Putting in your DPT-3, it would be much better if you could write that back as an income, and then subsequently, if there is a claim, then you can claim your expense therein, like sir has suggested, by putting in a discount.
Okay.
Okay. Now, anything else that we have here? No. Coming to now preferential allotment. Now, preferential allotment में इस बार auditors को पूछा गया है कि whether all the provisions of section 42 and 62 have been taken care of. Now, again, a very, very important propositions here. For section 42, section 62, very, very confusing sections, rights issue, private placement, preferential allotment. lot of sections getting sections and subsections. And जैसे 185, 186 form a cluster of discussion, 42 for 62 have always been a subject matter of discussion all the time. And अभी जब हमसे पूछ रहे हैं कि 42 and 62 का compliance हुआ कि नहीं हुआ बताइए, तो as auditors first of all हमें तो 42 और 62 properly समझ में आनी चाहिए, and we should understand what are the nitty-gritties and what are the important things of section 42 and 62. एक बहुत ही small example I will give you with section 42 and 62. Now 42 is a 42 is rights issue, okay, and 62 is private placement. And rights issue में कहीं भी लिखा नहीं था कि separate bank account खोलना है, तो हमने सबने उस loophole को अटैक कर लिया और हमने बोला कि इसमें तो कहीं separate bank account लिखने बोला नहीं है, तो ठीक है existing bank account में पैसे ले लीजिए rights issue का, ठीक है. बहुत लोग खुलवाते भी हैं separately, right? बहुत लोग कहते हैं कि no, let's go by a combined reading of 42 and 62. If you ask me, I would want to always open a separate bank account and put the money in there, right? So when you say a same bank account, where is the problem, and what kind of non-compliances as auditors you would go in and see for section 42-62? Documentary आप सब देखोगे, PAS 4, PAS 5, offer letter, भेजा गया कि नहीं, कंपनी के पास प्रॉपर रिकॉर्ड्स है कि नहीं है, प्राइवेट प्लेसमेंट रिकॉर्ड होना चाहिए PAS 5 में, वो आपके पास, the secretarial records you will go and verify as auditors. This time, first time, I think we will all go and verify secretarial records, right? Now, if there are no secretarial records, then we have to see what we can do, right? But the point is that we will all have to verify and ensure that secretarial records are present this time. Number one thing. Number two thing is, do we all realize that there is a clause in section 42 and 62, combined reading of 42 and 62, which says that you cannot use the money that you have raised unless the return of allotment has been filed? I'm sure all of us are aware of this section and this provision. As an auditor, it will be very, very important for us to ensure that the money was indeed not used before PAS 3 was filed. And this is a very, very difficult proposition practically. Because the moment the money enters the bank account, the natural tendency of clients is to use that money, right? So उनको PAS 3 file होने तक रोकना थोड़ा difficult हो जाता है. And I'm sure कि ये एक non-compliance है जो as auditors आपको सब समय दिखेगा. And आपको ये point out करना चाहिए, क्योंकि जब specifically इस बार पूछा गया है कि provisions of 42-62 whether complied with or not, we are under duty to report, right? If CARO is applicable. So before 15, now you will tell me that same bank account, money comes in, business to chalega hi, of course, but the balance will not fall below the amount that you will have, you must have raised through a rights issue, right? One small thing that I would all like to punch in here, again, food for thought, we would want ideas from everybody here. We have all heard that whenever we do a rights issue, we offer shares to the existing shareholders. And the existing shareholders have a right to renounce those shares in favor of somebody else, right? Or if they do not subscribe to their shares and there are shares left at the disposal of the board can allot it in the way it feels most beneficial to the interest of the company. We are all clear on this, right? Now, a small food for thought here is rights issue में valuation की भी जरूरत नहीं होती है. We all know this, that rights issue में there is no mandate for a valuation, no registered valuer report required for rights issue, right? So we have done the rights issue allotment at a face value of ₹10, for example, and certain shareholders have renounced their right and we have given the rights to somebody else. Will there be any implication under Companies Act or Income Tax Act? Let's make it simple. Question को थोड़ा simple कर लेते हैं. दो shareholder है, मैंने दोनों को 50% allotment shares का जो हमको करना है, we have offered because those are 50% stakeholders, ठीक है? 50% A को, 50% B को. B बोल रहा है कि मैं नहीं लूंगा, मैं सिर्फ 25 लूंगा, 25 किसी और को दूंगा, तो 25 C ने ले लिया, ठीक है? Allotment face value पे ही हुआ क्योंकि rights issue में valuation की जरूरत नहीं है, right? Does this have any implications under Income Tax Act? कंपनीज एक्ट के हिसाब से आपका ट्रांजैक्शन बिल्कुल स्मूथ चला गया. Does this have implications under Income Tax Act? If anybody could give us any opinion on this.
fair value के नीचे ट्रांजैक्शन हुआ, मतलब fair value कैन भी उसका हो सकता है probably 100 रुपया हो, 200 रुपया हो, कुछ भी हो, but we issue them at 10 rupees eventually.
Okay. So income.
Amit Saraf says yes. हाँ.
Okay, Amit ji.
ये वाला जो है, हाँ, basically.
Amit ji, can you unmute and tell us what is the problem in the Income Tax Act? Amit ji, if you would like to unmute and share what problems would such a transaction create in the Income Tax Act?
Probably not comfortable.
Okay. Okay. See, I would like to just put in a small thing here. Is this that whenever the shareholding gets disturbed, right? If the allotment is not at fair value, then income tax is going to definitely, there is definitely an income tax implication. Whether the assessing officer realizes this or does not realize this will depend on how lucky you and the company is. But if shareholding is disturbed, there definitely there is a income tax implication. If in rights issue shareholding is not disturbed, जैसे A और B को 50-50% shares मैंने दिए थे, rights issue के by dint of rights issue I've offered them another 50-50 and they've taken 50-50. Shareholding remains same. In this case, there is no income tax implication. The income tax department is of the view that because there is no change in shareholding, the beneficial ownership also does not change. And therefore, they are not concerned कि आपने 10 रुपए का शेयर 100 रुपए का शेयर को 10 रुपए में दे दिया इनको. Ultimately, उनको जितनी ownership मिलनी थी उनको उतनी मिलनी है, right? But rights issue करके जब there is a change in change in ownership, इनकम टैक्स कम्स एंड सेज कि आपको ये शेयर 100 का जो शेयर्स है वो आपने सस्ते में खरीद के 25% स्टेक ले लिया कंपनी का. लॉजिकली थोड़ा सोच के देखिए तो आपको समझ में आएगा कि इनकम टैक्स वालों को प्रॉब्लम क्यों है वहां पे, राइट? एंड व्हाई आई एम पॉइंटिंग दिस आउट नाउ, दिस इज अ लिटिल ऑफ द रिकॉर्ड ऑफ व्हाट वी आर एक्चुअली डिस्कसिंग. दिस इज नॉट कंसर्न्ड विद एनी रिपोर्टिंग इन द बैलेंस शीट, बट दिस इज व्हाई इट इज व्हाई आई एम टॉकिंग दिस, बिकॉज़ हम 42 और 62 की जब बात कर रहे हैं, lot of people avoid private placement and route it through this way. Okay, and when you avoid private placement and route it through this way, therefore I am suggesting कि यहाँ पे एक income tax का implication हो सकता है, and it is always better to therefore go through a private placement route in which you take a valuation report and do your allotment at a fair value price only. Okay, so just for the benefit of the audience, I wanted to point this out, that if you are using rights issue as an alternative to private placement by routing the transaction like this, these kind of transactions might have an income tax implication.
Ma'am, what happens if, B, say, they are holding 50-50, नया शेयर इशू करना है, B बोलता है, I'll subscribe to just half, बाकी half जो है वो आप A को दे दो. Is that possible also? Instead of giving it to C? And in that case, I mean, does the scenario remain the same or it changes? Because shareholding में तो change होएगा थोड़ा.
Correct. So long as there's a shareholding change, even if C does not come in, A takes the shares.
हाँ, तो भी it will come into picture.
No, yeah. He still gets extra shareholding for सस्ता दाम.
Right, true. ठीक है, thank you.
सस्ता मिल गया तो उसका income from other sources हो जाना है, FMV minus the allotment price.
Right.
So 42 and 62 are very, very complex, sections. पढ़ने में, plain reading will look okay, but when you get into the practical aspects and when you as an auditor would try to analyze whether things have been done or not, you have to be very sure before you report कि everything is okay as per 42-62. And 42-62 में सबसे important है आपका secretarial records checking. So whenever we are auditing this time, ensure that you check all papers. If there has been an allotment during the year, be it right issue or private placement, ensure you have checked all secretarial papers. Don't be satisfied with only the form pass-3 that you will get.
And what happens in case of just share transfer? In that case, do we need, there is anything, that we need to check other than form SH7?
See, form SH7 also did not be checked by you as an auditor, because SH7 is a document that has been executed between the two shareholders.
Right.
As its auditor, you are not concerned. What you are concerned with is the board resolution approving that transfer. That's all.
Okay.
Okay. So 4262 में secretarial records checking will become very important, and ensure कि वो सारे papers are forming part of your audit documentation also. Because without those documents forming part of audit documentation, tomorrow you don't have papers to back your claim stating that all provisions of 4262 have been complied with. When we talk of 4262, we are also talking of things like offer letter has been properly serviced or not. When I say serviced or not, when we mean to say that it is properly served to all shareholders or not. Let me again remind you, offer letters are mode of service in section 42 and 62. Hand deliveries are not allowed. So therefore, if we are thinking of making these papers on a backdated mode and putting in signatures received karke, so that is not going to work. Section 4262 does not allow hand delivery of service of notice. So therefore, offer letter का जो service हुआ है, वो अगर email से हुआ है, तो copy of email, if it has been done by post, copy of the postal receipt, all this should form part of our audit documentation. Sometimes what happens is when we are checking these sections, we just take a copy of the form pass-3 and we are okay with it. As auditors, please go one step ahead this time and try to take all papers relevant. For this, you will have to go through 4262 and the relevant rules, and ensure that you have documents like pass-4 in your audit documentation file, pass-5 in your documentation file, the list of allottees, the extract of board resolutions, extract of EOGM, copy of MGT 14, challans, etc. So these kind of documents should form part of your audit documentation, so as to allow you to comment on whether whether the provisions of 4262 have been met. Okay. The next thing that we are supposed to report is CARO 2020 requires auditors to report whether the fraud has been noticed or reported either in the company or by the company during the year, and is not limited to fraud by officers or employees. Now, what constitutes fraud, and how far would you go to find out कि कोई fraud हुआ है कि नहीं है? That is another big question that we generally ask, and this clause, without paying any heed or without obtaining any documentation, we end up reporting in CARO that no fraud has been detected during the year, right? We should understand that और कुछ भी ना करे, we don't follow any other procedures, but at least we should have written representations from management state in relation to frauds, cost records. These are clauses in CARO जो हम कभी देखते नहीं. हमारे article assistants लोग last year का copy paste कर देते हैं और हम लोग उसके backing में कोई भी documentation रखते नहीं है. Tomorrow, if there happens to be a disciplinary action or if there happens to be an inquiry, we as auditors would not be in a position to even justify our stand on these clauses, right? So therefore, when we talk of frauds, we should at least have a written representation from the management stating that there has been no frauds that have been detected. Please understand that as auditors, two types of frauds are only what we are concerned with. Number one, misstatement resulting from fraudulent financial reporting. Number two, misstatement resulting from misappropriation of asset. हम दो ही टाइप के फ्रॉड्स के साथ कंसर्न हैं, राइट? पहला कंसर्न कि भाई कोई फ्रॉड आपके डिस्क्लोजर में किया गया है, सहारा ग्रुप ने अपने अकाउंट्स को विंडो ड्रेस किया बहुत सालों तक, राइट? तो दैट इज व्हाट मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन, फ्रॉडुलेंट फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग, राइट? एंड सेकंड इज कि एसेट्स को मिसअप्रोप्रिएट किया, तो वो क्या हो गया, वो भी एक फ्रॉड हो गया. तो एज ऑडिटर्स, फाइनेंशियल ऑडिटर्स, स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिटर्स, आई एम कंसर्न्ड विद ओनली टू काइंड्स ऑफ फ्रॉड्स. सब टाइप के फ्रॉड्स में दिमाग लगाने की हमें जरूरत है नहीं. अगर आपको लगता है इन दोनों में से कोई भी एक फ्रॉड एग्जिस्टिंग हो सकता है, तो उसमें यू पुट योर हेड. But to my knowledge and understanding, most small companies are private companies, and these kind of things generally don't occur in those family-held companies. And so, therefore, if you are auditing such a company, we might just be satisfied with a management representation letter with relation to fraud. But ensure that you have this letter in your audit documentation. Right? ओके. एक पॉइंट और इस बार नया आया है, वो है इंटरनल ऑडिट. एंड ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो गया है, क्योंकि इंटरनल ऑडिट को स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिटर्स को बोला गया है कि आपने इंटरनल ऑडिट की सारे रिपोर्ट्स देखे हैं कि नहीं. राइट? अब ये कौन से कंपनीज पे एप्लीकेबल है कि ये सभी पे एप्लीकेबल है?
Not applicable to all the companies. In जैसे कारो में जो reporting है, there are 2 points, right? So the first point I think talks about the processes and those sort of things which is applicable to everyone. The second point talks about कि internal audit why या नहीं why, which is not applicable to every company. उसका जो भी आपका turnover का या कुछ criteria है where you mandatorily have to keep an internal auditor, वो वाला point खाली उधर applicable है as far as I remember.
Okay. Anybody else?
Ram Avatar ji, Amit ji, want to add something? Lokesh, Pradeep Kumar ji.
इसमें 2-3 चीजें हैं. पहली बात कि जो इंटरनल फाइनेंशियल कंट्रोल का जो रिपोर्टिंग है, इंटरनल फाइनेंशियल कंट्रोल का रिपोर्टिंग इस एनेक्चर 2 या एनेक्चर बी जो जैसे लिखता है अपने ऑडिट रिपोर्ट में वैसे लिखता है. इंटरनल फाइनेंशियल कंट्रोल का जो रिपोर्टिंग है उससे भी सर्टेन एग्जेम्पशंस है. हम इसको रिपोर्टिंग को इस क्लॉज के साथ कंफ्यूज ना करें. जो इंटरनल फाइनेंशियल कंट्रोल का रिपोर्टिंग है, दैट इज अ सेपरेट रिपोर्टिंग. इफ इट इज एप्लीकेबल टू योर कंपनी, देन यू विल then you will report. Now, if the internal financial control hai, I hope all of us are aware that there are certain exemptions given in the 5th June notification for private limited companies, right? Certain private limited companies के auditors को internal financial control पे report नहीं करना है, तो वो जरूर देख लीजिएगा whenever you are preparing your audit report. Okay. Secondly, this clause that has newly come in the CARO 2020 requires auditors to comment whether all reports of internal auditors you have checked or not, and whether you have incorporated those in your own report. Now, this is applicable, this clause is applicable to only companies falling under section 138. Okay, जिनको internal auditor रखना mandatory है. अब मुझे बताइए कि आपका कंपनी है, आपको 138 के लिमिट्स आप क्रॉस नहीं करते हो, लेकिन आपने वॉलंटरीली एक इंटरनल ऑडिट रख रखा है, इंटरनल ऑडिटर रख रखा है एक जन को. अभी आई एम द स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिटर. एम आई अंडर ऑब्लिगेशन टू लुक इनटू दोस रिपोर्ट्स ऑफ इंटरनल ऑडिट डन बाय एन इंटरनल ऑडिटर इफ देयर इज एन इंटरनल ऑडिटर ऑलरेडी?
There is an auditor, then yes, ma'am. I think will be required to check.
What happens? Okay, let's go further. What happens if that internal auditor has completed internal audit till December? ठीक है, मार्च का रिपोर्ट आया नहीं है, आप स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट करने पहुंच गए मई में. अब वो इंटरनल ऑडिटर बोल रहा है कि अभी इंटरनल ऑडिट का रिपोर्ट बना नहीं है, अभी टाइम लगेगा, लेकिन आपको स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट अब तक खत्म कर देना है. अभी आपको क्या करना है? आप इस मैटर
I think we can always mention in our report that the internal audit report that is available with us or with the management is only till December or something of that sort.
Anybody else? 2 questions here. Internal audit not mandatory for me, but I have still kept an internal auditor. Now, as a statutory auditor, are you in an obligation to check those reports? If yes, if a report has not been made available to you, would you report that in Caro? See, internal audit, from what I understand, is कि internal auditor का जो provision है, अगर वो applicable है तो आपको mandatory है. अगर company ने voluntarily एक internal auditor रखा है, then it is up to you as a statutory auditor to decide whether you would want to consider those reports or not. If there's an internal auditor, of course, as a statutory auditor, I would want to go through those reports because that helps me to find out any loopholes that somebody else must have noticed while doing the internal audit. Now, if you find anything that is there in the internal audit report, can you simply rely on that and report that in your audit report? No. You have to perform audit procedures on your own and then only report after satisfying yourself. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि अगर आपके इंटरनल ऑडिटर ने रिपोर्ट में लिखा है that is frequent, frequently the cash book does not tally with the balance in books of accounts. तो आप भी उसको जाके लिख दीजिए वही नोट को अपने फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट में विदाउट योरसेल्फ वेरीफाइंग whether that balance actually matches or not. So you cannot blindly rely on that. That is only a reference point. Now, if it is mandatory for a company to keep internal audit and internal audit का report आपको नहीं मिला, let's say last quarter का report, तो आपको wait करना पड़ेगा in that case. और अगर despite waiting also आपको report नहीं मिलता है तो आपको report करना है कारो में. But if internal audit is not mandatory, but I am doing this voluntarily, I want to check the reports and the last quarter report has not been made available to me, I would want to decide whether I would want to put this in Caro or not.
Right? Ma'am, the point that I was mentioning now, I'll just share my screen 1 second. Is this one. In our opinion and based on our examination, the company has an just 1 second, sorry. The company has an internal audit system which is commensurate with the nature and size. It does not talk about internal financial control.
Yeah, so this
talks about the internal audit system.
So this both of them are concerned with those companies where section 138 is applicable.
Where?
138 is applicable, and because see, if 138 is applicable, how would you even justify that the company has an internal audit system? If you are sure that yes, there are internal people doing an internal audit, then in that case you report in A. But I would not prefer to write this unless I'm sure that there actually internal audit is happening.
But in the guidance note, now this has been mentioned. In the guidance note, I'll have to check. But as far as I remember, this has been specifically mentioned over there that this is what you need to write.
I am not too sure on this. Okay.
I'll just check. You continue, ma'am. I'll just check with the guidance note once. Caro.
Okay. Oh. Okay. Next bit is non-cash transactions. अभी non-cash transactions ना इस साल बोल रहे हैं कि डायरेक्टर के साथ कोई non-cash transaction हुआ कि नहीं हुआ रिपोर्ट करिए. अभी नॉन कैश ट्रांजैक्शन की जब बात करेंगे ना तो ये बहुत ही ट्रिकी हो जाता है. अभी डायरेक्टर समझ लीजिए कहीं घूमने गया है एंड डायरेक्टर को कंपनी ने कुछ सडेक्सो कूपन्स दे दिए कि ये लेके जाइए वहां पे आपको काम आएगा. ये क्या है? नॉन कैश ट्रांजैक्शन है. आपको पता चलेगा कि ऐसा कुछ हुआ था, आपको पता नहीं चलेगा बिल्कुल. ठीक है. सिमिलर है कि कंपनी का जो गेस्ट हाउस है वहां पे डायरेक्टर रह रहा है फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट. ओके. This is a non-cash transaction happening between the company and a director. Non-cash transactions को evaluate करना will become very difficult. Okay. And as an auditor, we will have to fall back on a few documents. Who are the persons connected with directors? ये पहले भी हमें पता करना था, तो हमने बोला था MVP 1 देख लीजिएगा. MVP 1 देखने से आइडिया लग जाएगा. Who are the people connected with directors? If you don't find MVP 1, then you are going to have a tough time identifying such people, right? Then we could go through form MVP 2, which is the register of loans and guarantees, etc. MVP 4, So these are all documents that the company should have. How much in practical life you will find these documents with companies or not, I am not too sure on these. Okay, so non-cash transactions ke liye ensure you take MRLs for those. Another important thing that this year CARO 2020 is mandating us as auditors is ki if you are incoming in as an auditor into a company and an auditor has resigned before you, ADT 3 का कॉपी हम सब ले ही रहे थे क्योंकि हमें चालान में ADT 1 भरते वक्त वो चालान नंबर चाहिए होता था. So we were taking ADT 3 and I am sure all of us following the code of ethics have been taking NOC also from the previous auditor. But this year we have to go a little further and we have to see why did the previous auditor resign. Okay, so we have to seek a copy of letter of resignation wherein the previous auditor has stated the reasons to the management why he has resigned, right? We can also carry out additional audit procedures like reading minutes of board meetings, inquiring from the management and reading the communication to audit committee agar audit committee hai to. And we should exercise our professional judgments while evaluating the reasons for resignation. Further, the incoming auditor should also consider the audit evidence obtained during his audit procedures while performing audit procedures under SA 500 audit evidence. For example, if the incoming auditor obtains additional audit evidence which relates to reasons for resignation of outgoing auditor, the incoming auditor should consider such evidence obtained while issuing an audit opinion in the current year. Example क्या हो सकता है? Let's say कि I am the resigning auditor and Priyank is the incoming auditor. And while doing his audit, he realizes I had resigned because there was limitation on my scope of audit. And Priyank, while doing his audit, has sought for certain information which the management is not ready to give. He would immediately realize that he can easily, correspond this with the reason for resignation of the outgoing auditor. And accordingly, his report should state this fact that the previous auditor resigned on such grounds, and during the course of audit, I was also facing the same issue. So this kind of reporting is now required under CARO. So resignation has been taken seriously. This also gives us scope to resign from companies which actually do not cooperate with the audit procedure. So as auditors, I think this is a good thing. Quickly, I think the last 1 minute I would take on this point is going concern. Now, this year, the auditor needs to comment on the basis of financial ratios, aging and expected dates of realization of financial assets and payment liabilities, other information and auditor's knowledge of the board's plans. कि going concern impact हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है. Auditor has to make assessment as on the date of audit report and should perform necessary procedures as required by SA 560. The auditor should read the section of director's report, management discussion. ये सब जरूरी नहीं है ready हो जाएगा आपकी report के पहले, लेकिन अगर हो गया हो तो आप उसको भी देख सकते हैं. Because going concern पे comment करना बहुत ज़्यादा easy नहीं होता है if there is some problem in the company. We all know latest IBC में बहुत कुछ होते रहता है and lot of companies have been put under the IBC process. Now, if a company goes through a CIRP process, CIRP admit हो जाता है, and you are the auditor of that company, it becomes very important for you to raise a question on the going concern. Right? So, सब कुछ बहुत thoroughly देखने के बाद, financial ratios देखने के बाद, we should comment on the going concern bit of any company. Right? So, I think it is now 7. Priyank, we should close this discussion here. If there is any questions or any points that further anybody needs a discussion on, we can take this up here.
Yes, ma'am. Just 1 second. I was just going through that CARO point only. Yes, ma'am. So over here now, so this is the old guidance note, which was there, not today's guidance note. So this says that the following are examples of reporting under this clause. Situation A, company has an internal audit system. In our opinion, this is company does not have an internal audit system. Okay, it becomes a negative that we don't have a negative and C, the company does not have an internal audit system, also not mandated. So you're saying it should be this?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. And the company does not have an internal audit system and is not required to have an internal as per provisions of. Okay.
In fact, if a company has some companies, what they do, they form a committee themselves, amongst themselves. Okay. या कोई रिटायर्ड जो एम्प्लॉय होगा उसको बना देते हैं हेड, खुद का इंटरनल ऑडिट फंक्शन बना लेते हैं. अगर मोस्ट प्राइवेट कंपनीज में तो आपको ये सब मिलेगी नहीं. अगर मिलती भी है so I would still prefer to write that the company has an informal internal audit system which is a committee so and so, although it is not mandated. इसलिए मैंने बोला कि आप क्लॉज ए को how would you report if without even checking कि internal audit system है भी कि नहीं. A and B both are concerned with section 138 here. Right? So if points that we would want to take from the audience.
Any queries that any one of us has? Well, I don't think so. Ramakta ji, you're there. If you're, if you can just unmute yourself. Well, I don't think so. Fine. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was wonderful, a 2-day session. And as last time, this is the e-memento that we have for you.
Thank you.
It will be shared over email. So thank you so much, ma'am, for it. It was a very interesting session. Both the sessions, for that matter, they were like really nice, and we look forward to more such sessions. Amit ji, whether recording will be available, everything is on YouTube, ACA Kolkata page, both day 1 and day 2. You can go there and check and you will get that, right? And ma'am, whenever you're in town, please let us know in advance. We can have a physical session as well.
Sure, definitely.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a pleasure listening to you.
For giving me this opportunity. Very, very enriching for me also to be here in this association.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and to all the participants, thank you so much for being a part of this 2-day session, and we look forward for the next session next week. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.